What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the DK Garage. I'm Jeremy, that's Joe, and this is the Race Day Rundown.
Yeah, we're at Michigan International Speedway this week, 2 mile long track. We got a lot of action that's probably going to be unfolding in front of us. We'll dissect it real quick here in our race day rundown. We had our full version of the podcast already, so if you want to check that out, the link's up above. So go scope that out. But we're going to get in and out with our DK impact scores. That's a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a big impact on the race. We're doing a little bit differently this week, remote, but it's still going to be impactful. We also want to let you know, try to get in on our DraftKings contest. Plenty of spots available. You can drop your DK tag below to get in on that action. We've seen a lot of uptick in the contests there. A lot of fun to be had. So if you would like, just drop your DK tag below. We'll get you on that weekly invite list. But Jeremy, I'm ready to take this thing away. You want to jump into the race preview and let the folks know what we're in for?
Yeah, so last year we ran the back-to-back here, and they shortened up the race. So this is actually going to be a little longer than those two races were. It's a 200 lap event at a 2 mile track, so it's 400 miles. Easy math there. Quite a few more performance points than what we've had the last couple weeks with the road courses. We have 140 up for grabs in this race. The stages are going to break down 60, 60 for the first two stages, and the final stage is going to be 80 laps. I would imagine there's going to be a cop caution, probably lap, unless you've heard, I think it's probably going to be lap 20, 25, I would think.
Yeah, I haven't heard any specifics, but yeah, we would be seeing one since there is not any qualifying or practice this week.
Yeah, so somewhere around in there, that could definitely make things interesting between the two Hendrick drivers starting up front. But the guy I think we need to get into first is Kyle Larson. He comes in at the top of the salary board at $11,500. He's starting first, three-time winner here. Is in the points lead for the regular season championship. The guy is on a roll. I have no reason not to give him a 10. I mean, this is a great track for him. He's been good in this package. He doesn't have to pass any cars to start with. Where are you going to land on Larson this week?
I'm at a 9. I want to give him a 10, but that price tag, he's going to. I have a feeling he'll have an opportunity to really to get those dominator points and establish himself. He'll have a big impact on the race, but I think there might be another driver or two that might inhibit him from being as dominant as we could see. So I've got a 9. Definitely want a good bit of exposure. He's going to be somebody I will target in some cash game scenarios. But my 10, you mentioned you gave a 10. I've given a 10 to the next guy, Kyle Busch. He's 10-8, starting seventh, a little bit more place differential upside. He's been strong in 550 horsepower equipment, which we're in this weekend. I think, to me, he's one of my favorite plays, if not my favorite play on the boards this weekend.
Yeah, I believe he's finished in the top five, six of the eight races on 550 horsepower tracks. And I'm pretty sure at least one or two of those he didn't was probably the super speedway. So you're right, the guy has been strong in this package. This is a pretty decent track for him. Not as much success recently, but obviously you know the dude can get around basically any track if they show up with the right car. Again, practice. We don't have that this week. We'll see if that kind of affects him a little bit. But I'm going to be at a 9. I think Kyle Busch is really good. And this week in our weekly podcast, we really went through almost a complete slate and dove into the numbers. So if there's any driver that you're kind of wanting to know more about, check out that podcast because we talk numbers for just about everybody. But we are going to keep this one a little short and sweet. So we're going to move on to Denny Hamlin, 10,400. Comes in, he's starting ninth, just lost the points lead. I'm sure he's going to be trying to do what he can to get some points to get back in there. They need those bonus points. I think he's in a good spot. Some PD upside there. Maybe a sneaky dominator play. Um, Again, he's got good success here at different times. I'm going to be at an 8 on Hamlin this week.
Yeah, I could see him being a little bit under owned with that higher price tag starting ninth. He's got some opportunity for a great day and to be able to reach value if he has a strong finish, which he's really well or easily able to do and capable of doing in this package. So I would look to him to be a little bit of a contrarian play to some of these other guys because as we get lower on the list, there's some drivers that you'll want to have some upside. So I think he might be a little bit under owned this week, and I wouldn't mind having him in a couple situations.
I'm gonna be at an 8 on this next guy as well. William Byron, 10-2, starting 18th. He's got a win in 550. He's had some up and downs on some of these tracks here lately. It seems like he's been running a little stronger. We saw him look good on the Indy Road Course. Finally had that speed back. Starting 18th, there's a ton of PD upside. Maybe a little bit more expensive than what I would prefer to pay for a William Byron. But I'm going to be at an 8. Where are you going to land at on a Willie B?
I'm at a 9 this week. I think that 10-2 price tag is a little high, but place differential is what he's offering starting 18th. I think that is a little bit higher than I really feel confident in playing. But again, he's got a strong path to value. He's been strong in this equipment. I think this could be one of those races where they try to right the ship a little bit headed into the playoffs. He's he could sneak out a top five here and have a great day. Getting a top 10 most likely won't do it. He'll need that great finish to be worth the top value that you're looking for, but he's got the equipment to be able to achieve that, in my opinion.
He's legit got top 5 upside here. I don't necessarily think he's going to achieve that. I think he'll fall somewhere inside the top 10, maybe just outside. So it is, a little risky in my opinion. That's why I'm not a little higher as you are. But I think with what we've seen with Hendrick as an organization and him, top 5 upside is certainly there. He could even potentially get a top 3 here. So I think William Byron should be considered quite a bit depending on how you decide to build your lineups. Another guy
Yeah.
that I think needs to be considered, who we've pretty much been able to kind of just take off the board almost every week, is Kevin Harvick. He's won this race the last 3 times we've been here and has 5 wins overall on this track. The dude is incredible. He comes in at $10,000, a little high for his performance so far this year. Starting eighth, not a lot of PD upside. But like I said, he's been one of the best drivers, really statistically the best driver over the last 10 races here at Michigan. I'm going to be at an 8. I think he's worth a play. Where are you at?
Yeah, I landed on an 8 as well. I think he has the upside necessary this week. We talked about in the podcast how the aero blocking will be part of the situations that these drivers have to face this week, and he's got as much of experience as anyone here at this track. And I think with his success and the way that they're looking to guide into the playoffs, this would be a big boost for them headed into this final stretch. So I'm looking for a decent performance out of him. And if it doesn't happen, it's one of those things where we've kind of seen the ups and downs of Stuart Haas this weekend, but I really do want to have some exposure to him this week in the right environments.
And I just got to think, they've got to have been working on this car, getting it ready for this race for several weeks. I mean, we've been at two
Yeah,
road courses, you know.
I have a feeling that they've got this one kind of circled. This is one of his more dominant tracks, and he's got a lot of great stats that we talked about exclusively in that podcast about how performance driven he is here. See if they've kind of given him a little bit extra boost in the setup this weekend to help him achieve that.
Okay, so next on the board we have Brad K, $9,800, starting 20th. I think Brad is going to have to be considered as well. I got to give him a 7 because he's really struggled the last 2 weeks, different types of tracks, of course. But, uh, pretty decent, obviously, here. And he's also been pretty good in these 550 horsepower packages. I think 7, it's a little expensive for what we've seen here lately. But I think that team's going to be turning around. We also talked about how they switch spotters. I don't think that matters too much, but you never know. It might help him out just a little bit. I mean, he's getting TJ Majors, one of the best in the series, I think.
Yeah, I've came in at a 7 this week. I kind of want to understand how that dynamic's going to work. They haven't looked that great, but he's got place differential and a strong path to value if he does have a solid race. If he gets a top 10, he could be somebody to find himself in a nice position. I personally would go a little bit more heavy with his teammate, Joey Logano, who's next on the board, 9,600. He's starting 19th, one position back. I've given Joey an 8 because I think he's got a little bit more better history here at Michigan. Not so much as great results in the 550 versus the 750 horsepower package, though. A little concerning, but I think overall, what we've seen from him consistently through the season allows me to feel more comfortable in rostering him.
Yeah, I am there with you. I mean, when I was thinking about this earlier. Quick little, you know, detour. This seems to be one of the most like sort of Jekyll and Hyde races. You got Harvick who's coming in, with the history on his side, completely good, but the season performance is off. I think you got Logano coming in where he's got some good history here, um, running pretty good, but he has not been good in the 550 package. Like he's clearly been much better in the 750 horsepower package. The only one, really the only two, are the two Kyles that I think kind of come in with both history on their side and performance for the season. So it makes it kind of interesting because, I'm at an 8 with Logano, but the reason why I kind of bring it up is I feel kind of that same way about Martin Truex. He's been really, really solid here. He doesn't have the wins, but I forget what it is off the top of my head, but he's got like, what is it, five? I think he's got four top fives in the last four races. Um, the dude has just been really, really good here. But when it comes to 550s, it's like they're not even showing up half the time. They are focused on the playoff tracks, it seems, specifically the 750s. I'm going to be at an 8 on Truex because I think he's going to carry much lower ownership. I think a lot of people are going to want to play the guys we just talked about and then go down several spots below to pick up those next guys. So I think if Truex hits, you're going to get him at really low ownership, and he's capable of doing that based on his history. What are you thinking with
Oh,
Truex this week?
he's more than capable of doing it, but again, I side with you. This isn't a track that's on the playoff schedule. They seem to prioritize that. They seem to prioritize the 750 horsepower package. They do have a little bit of success in the 550, but more so in the 750. And I just haven't seen a lot for them to see like, hey, this is a priority for us headed into the playoffs. I'm at a 7. I might have some exposure just because of the scenario you laid out in the GPP tournament environments. That's where I would play them, but not in cash this week.
So this is the only 2 mile track that we're going to get this year. We didn't run Fontana, the Auto Club Speedway earlier because it's too early in the season. California was still very shut down, COVID protocols. So we don't have any other 2 mile history to go off of this year. So we're using a lot of 1.5 mile stats. And in my opinion, I kind of feel like the Charlotte track is going to play similar to what we're going to see at Michigan. And if that's the case, it's going to be Larson and his teammate Chase Elliott up front most of the day competing. And that brings us to the next guy on the list, Chase Elliott, starting second at $9,200. Um, really unsure what you're going to get with ownership with him. Obviously, being the most popular driver, he's going to have, even when he shouldn't, he's going to have higher ownership. But I think he's going to come in a little underweight because there's some guys above and below that are worth rostering. He could be the guy that actually outperforms Larson. He's got good track history here, and he's not bad on the 550s this year. What's your thoughts on Elliott, and where do you rate him?
At $9,200, I've given him an 8. I think he could be an alternate to the dominators at the top of this list at a discount. When you look at 11.5 for Larson versus 9.2 for Chase Elliott, that's a big discount that you're able to fit in some other key drivers to make your lineup a little bit different. So I really do like Chase this week. I want some solid exposure to him at that price tag for sure.
Now, do you feel the same way about Ryan Blaney? Because he's next. He's 9,200, or excuse me, 9,000, and he is starting third. But he's been fairly solid on 550s as well. I mean, he's got a win at Atlanta, actually ran down Larson, who dominated that race. I don't have as much confidence in him. I'm 2 points lower on him than I am Chase. I'm going to give him a six. Um, but I know Blaney's kind of your boy. Where are you feeling we're going to get out of Blaney this week?
Yeah, he's been on a little bit of a run here lately. I've given him a 7, a little bit higher than you. I think he has a little less upside than Chase. I think we've seen Chase be a little consistent, like with True or with Blaney being a little bit more consistent lately, but Chase over the season being a little bit more consistent. I think that Chase is where I would lean a little bit more heavy, but I will definitely have some Ryan Blaney. I just don't want to go too much on the over the top with him, and I'm not going in cash game scenarios with him this weekend.
Yeah, you have to be pretty ballsy to take him in cash. But hey, sometimes those plays end up playing out. But I won't be that guy doing it this week. A guy that I might take a little bit of a chance on, though, is Alex Bowman. He comes in at 8,800, starting 10th. I'm at a 7, but after doing a little bit of research, I would be more inclined to maybe give him an 8. But I'll stick with the 7 because he's the most inconsistent, I think, kind of throughout the season for Hendrick or for the Hendrick drivers. Obviously, they've all had their troubles at different times in the season, but he's had some really good highs, and then he's just had some really pathetic races, a lot more than the others, I would say. But I think this is one of those races that he could really break through because the last time we were at Fontana was before all the COVID stuff. They had qualifying, they had practice, and he dominated that race and won it. And that's a 2 mile track as well. Hasn't been as good at Michigan. Um, the stats certainly reflect that, but he did finish top 10 the last year here. So I think we've seen a little bit different Bowman, and I think this is a spot where he could easily come in and get a top five, maybe even threaten for the win. Do you see it playing out that way, or are you seeing something different?
Well, I've landed on a 7 because I could see it playing out that way. He's been um, able to capitalize in some situations this year where weren't necessarily eyeing him to do so, and then he's had great days when we were expecting him to do so. So right now, I think this could be somewhere where you find him right in the middle, where you could get a decent little path to value with him starting 10th. He'll need that top 5 really to hit the value that we need, but he's more than capable of doing it this week. Again, I landed on a 7 because I think there's other drivers above him and some below him that have a little bit easier path to that value, but I don't want to miss the boat on Bowman this week.
Okay, so now we start getting into some interesting territory. The next guy is the last guy starting in the top 10 for a while. We got a lot of PD plays after this guy. I could really see him going overlooked. That's Kurt Busch, 8,500, starts sixth. Pretty good track for him. His average finish in the last 10, I believe, is 9.9, or it's inside 10th. So he's there. He could go under owned for sure, easily overlooked. But personally, I find it hard to see him pay off the value. I think there's some other plays. I'd rather pay a little bit more for Bowman. So I'm going to give Kurt a six. Are you seeing anything different?
No, I see it the same way as you. I've given him a 6 as well. I think just because where he's starting there in the in sixth position, that it doesn't offer that much upside. There's a little bit more downside to be had based on that starting position. That salary is a little high for that, in my opinion. It's going to be difficult for him to reach value, but it's not impossible. It's just going to be a bit of a challenge. So I want to kind of steer clear of him this week because there's some other drivers below that we're about to get to. I think that offer that better path to value.
Yeah, someone who will probably carry some ownership is Eric Almirola, 8,300. He starts 23rd. I think a lot of people um, will want to play him. They're going to be I would think stacking a lot of PD guys with Kyle Larson and Kyle Busch, maybe some Chase, Harvick, etc. But personally, uh, I find it hard for me to really want to play any Amarola this week. I think his 550 data is not strong. I mean, he's had some bad races in the very beginning of the season that skewed some of his numbers. But I mean, realistically, he could pay this off. But I would rather go to the guys right below him. Are you going to force yourself any exposure on Amarola?
Not at 8,300. I've given him a 5 in my impact score because I think there is just he's got an average finish of 24th in this package, and I just haven't seen enough from that team consistently to feel confident in pulling the trigger this week. The next two drivers I definitely will have more of, that's for sure.
So Christopher Bell is one of those drivers that you're talking about. 8,100, starts 28th. Yeah, I'm there with you. I'm giving him a 9. Um, I would expect him to be highly owned in Levine Family Equipment. I believe he finished or had an average finish last year of 15th. Both races he finished inside the top 20. So really, really strong numbers for that type of car. I think he can do better on that, and I think his path to value is pretty easy this week.
Well, obviously he's in Gibbs equipment this time around, so that will help his case. I've given him an impact score of 8. I know you landed on a 9, so I'm one off on that because the 550 data is a little bit subpar compared to his teammates. I think that's the only scary thing, but if he gets a top 15, man, he's hitting 5x easily, and that's something that that team's fully capable of doing. And I think I want a good chunk of that in my lineups this week.
Another guy I want a good chunk of. I mean, I'm probably going to just any tournaments or probably anything like that, probably just lock them in, and obviously any cash games if I go there. That's going to be Austin Dillon, starting 26 at 8,000. I, all you really need is a top 15, and I think that's easily achievable. He's trying to get in on the playoffs. They're going to be probably taking some big swings going for the win. So if they can get close to that, he's going to have a super easy path to value. I'm at a 9.
Yeah, I'm at a 9 too. I think this team is really trying to ride this into the playoffs, and he's averaging a top 10 in this equipment in the 550 horsepower package. We talked about it extensively in the podcast. I think he's one of my favorite driver, if not my favorite driver to roster all weekend, because of how much is at stake in the regular season.
So the next guy I think will be highly owned, and that's Daniel Suarez, 7,800. He starts 30th. Um, I'm at a 6. I think the inconsistencies they've shown the last few weeks, it's a little concerning. He can definitely get a top 15. He's proven that the car is capable of that. So if he does it, then he's going to pay off. But personally, I think there's a few other guys I'd rather go towards. I'm only at a 6.
7, I think he has a little bit of upside. They haven't been near as strong here as of late, and that's a little unfortunate because they had a great run throughout earlier stretches of the season. $7,800. It's a bit of a stretch, but that 30th place starting position, it's it's not anything to shy away from. I think if he can get a top 17 or so, he would be right there on the cusp of 5x, which you're looking for. But that's a bit of a stretch based on that 550 horsepower data that we were talking about. So I don't want to go overboard, but I will dabble them or sprinkle them in some GPP tournament environments for sure.
Ross Chastain is next, 7,700, starts 22nd. To me, he's kind of a coin flip guy this week. If you want to get off of some of the Dylan Suarez chalk, some of the Priest chalk that we're probably going to get into here next, I think he can certainly. I mean, we've seen him run good, but that's been more in the 750 versus the 550 that we're in this week. So I'm only at a 5 on Chastain. Do you have any real interest in Chastain?
I don't really, not this week, just with that price tag. I'm at a 5 as well. I might have one or two rosters with him on it, but for the most part, I think what you alluded to, Ryan Preece, 7,500, starting 32nd is where I will go. A lot of people, I would imagine, will look at some of the Michigan data and then the 550 data and see that he's been fairly confident in this package and had some success. So if he's able to get a top 20, he's knocking on the door for 5X. It's a little bit pricey and risky with that equipment, but I've given him an 8 because I think he's shown earlier in the season that that team can get it done in environments that suit their racing style.
So I think we're both pretty high on the next guy, Ryan Priest, 7,500, starts 32nd. I
That's who
gave
I was just talking about, man.
sorry about that, man. Your audio cut out a little bit, so I didn't hear
Okay.
everything that you were saying. Hopefully it'll sound okay in the video. Um, so yeah, I'm at a 7 on Priest. I kind of guess I'm kind of overlooking him because I actually think Tyler Reddick is a solid play. Um, I know he doesn't have the PD that some of the last guys that we just talked about had. Um, but 7,500, or excuse me, 7,400 starting 14th. I'm at an 8. I think he's worth it, especially in GPPs. You maybe don't go there in cash. But I think he's a guy that they're trying to get in on playoffs. They need as much points as they get. We saw him essentially win almost every stage over the road courses. They've separated themselves from their teammate. I like playing Reddick this week.
Yeah, I'm at an 8 as well on Reddick. I think he's in a decent position this week. That price tag's not too high for that 14th place starting position. He's got top 10 upside. He averages like a 12th place finish in this package, a little less than his teammate, but he doesn't have to do a ton to be able to reach that 5x value that we're targeting. But he has a little bit of some work to do. But with the way that they are approaching this, with the season winding down and needing those points, I think he can get there.
Someone who can get there, but I don't expect to, and I will probably not have any exposure to is Matty D, 7,300. He starts fourth. I love when I can play him. I just don't know if you can. Now, here's one thing that we didn't talk about in the podcast, and maybe we should have talked about this earlier. There is some decent chance for rain at this race. They obviously they're not going to race in the rain, so it would either be delayed. But there's a chance that maybe we see a shortened race, which would make I mean, that would really kind of change the board. You're less likely to go with the high price guys like Larson because he may not get as many dominator points. You may be looking at guys like Matty D who they may stay out on and try to pick up a late win possibly. They're still alive for the playoffs. They're going to be taking some swings at it. They're really good on restarts. They can kind of hold their own. Uh, this is obviously things that you can't build towards, but the reason why I kind of bring this up is on paper, Matty D is not really playable, but there are some elements at play that could make it worth rostering in a few GPPs. I'm going to be at a 5, kind of right there, like I said, right in the middle. Where are you going to be on Matty D? You going to play him?
I've got him at a 6 because I think he can be able to find himself in the right construction, be able to pay dividends if he has a strong run. We've seen him be a little bit more consistent. He's been good in 550 horsepower. He's got good acceleration and restarts, where this track is kind of a nice fit for that. So I could see him finding his way into one or two GPP lineups, but not more than that this week.
So there's really not too many more plays on the slate that I would really like to even go towards. Ryan Newman, uh, starting 16th. He's 7,100. I'm at a 3. You're at a 4. Is there anything you want to say about Newman?
He's just starting too high for me to feel comfortable in with that price tag this week. He could have a decent finish, but it's not going to be much better than that, and you would really need something more so to reach that value that's necessary to pay that price tag off.
Cole Custer comes in at 7,000. He starts 27th. We're both at 5s. Certainly playable, but not comfortable. Um, a great option to get off some of the more likely chalk, but don't love that play. Anything about Custer you really like?
Just that 27th starting position. Unfortunately, Stuart Haas hasn't had the most consistent performance over the course of the season, so it's hard to want to see him or want to roster him too much because of not really having that top 20 upside that he would need to reach value.
So I've heard some other people kind of talking the next guy up a little bit, and I find that hard to believe because he's actually our red flag in our race guide. That's Ricky Stenhouse. He comes in at 6,900. He is starting 12th. I gave him a 3. You're a little higher on him. I know you gave him a 4. Do you really want to go there at all? I mean, obviously, if you're doing 150 max, then certainly you could sprinkle him in, but I find it really hard for him to pay this off.
Yeah, he's in an awkward position. I think it's going to be very challenging for him to do so. He has 0 top 10s in 550 equipment this year. That's to me where he'll need to be to reach value, and I haven't seen it consistently enough for here recently having the strong performances to really make me feel comfortable and wanting to roster him.
We're both at a 4 on the next guy, Chase Briscoe. He starts 21st, 6,700. I think you would agree he's just starting too high up. Of course, anything can happen. That was proven last week. There's no real curbs to really eat any cars, so I think we're safe from that this week. But to me, Briscoe's really not rosterable. I think Chris Buescher is in an interesting spot, 6,500. He starts 11th. I'm at a 4. I know you're at a 3. We don't really like him. It's realistically too high starting position for him. He's more likely to finish around that 15th, 16th ish place. But he's shown some speed in 550s. If this is a shortened race, if they come with some of that early season speed, he could be a nice, really low ownership play. But honestly, for me, I don't think I'm going to end up there. Will you?
I doubt I will. Like I said, like you said, I'm at a 3. I've got information that I was looking at, like I want to rank him a little bit higher, but that starting position at 11 is just really difficult to want to pull the trigger on. He does have 3 top 10s in 550 equipment, so he does have a car capable of doing it if the situation is right. But it's going to be challenging. But 6,500, it might be worth the risk in 1 or 2 GPP tournament plays.
So there's only a couple guys really left to talk about. Bubba Wallace, 6,400. He's comes in starting 15th. I think he's a fine play. More of a tournament play for me. There's top 10 speed upside. I'm at a 5. I want to kind of go there more, but I think I'd rather go a little lower. Are you going to try to force a little bit more Bubba this week? Do you think it's worth kind of building around him at all?
We're so starved for value, in my opinion, in this lower price tier that you kind of have to pick and choose who you want to use in the right situations. In my opinion, I've given him a 6, so I think I will have a little bit more exposure in some roster configurations than others versus what you're doing. But yeah, it's going to be challenging with that 15th place starting position. We haven't seen him do too much better than that. But it's something that at the end of the day, he could have a 12th place, something along those lines finish, and that's good enough for a 5x value. That's all you're looking to do, and he only has to gain a couple spots from where he's starting.
So a guy that I'm probably just going to take completely off the board, Eric Jones. He's next. He's starting 13th at 6,200. It's just a starting spot with the equipment that he's in. They could still have a good run and maybe finish 17th, 18th, but that's not going to work out. There's there's a few guys that are just a little cheaper that I think are better options. I'm at a 4. I know you're at a 3. Is there anything that you want to say about Jones?
No, not this week. I think just unfortunately he's just starting too high with the equipment he's in.
Someone who's not starting too high is Michael McDowell. He comes in next. He's only 6,000. He's starting 25th. He was really Mr. Value last year. I think he had one of the best average values throughout the season. Um, I think if there was only one driver who beat him, it was Kevin Harvick last year. I mean, Obviously, much cheaper than Harvick was on an average basis. But McDowell was really consistent last year, getting inside those top 20s and getting the most out of his car. We've seen him look really good on 550s this year. I don't expect him to just go out there and crack top 12, top 10, unless without some crazy things happening. But I think if it's a fairly straight up race, I think he's not too far off from top 15, maybe 17th. I'm at a 7. Where do you think we're going to get out of McDowell this week?
Yeah, I landed at a 7 as well because 90% of the time in 550 horsepower equipment, he's getting a top 20. And if he gets 19th, he's hitting 5X. That's all I need to know. If he's getting 90% of the time in the top 20 and he just needs to scrape the top 20 to get 5X, he's in my roster all day long. I would even want to almost go higher and give him an 8 at this point. He's really been able to be someone in this equipment that you can kind of feel a little bit more comfortable than most. And you mentioned and hit home last year how much of a value driver he was for us through the extent of the season. So he's not anybody that's we're used to seeing him in positions like this and not priced up as high. So I think I will have a good bit of exposure for with McDowell this week.
I would give him an 8 as well. The only reason why I'm not is because I think he's going to be the highest owned driver below $7,000. I mean, he might be one of the highest owned drivers on the entire slate because some of these guys up top that you're obviously going to want to roster, like Larson or Kyle Busch, they're expensive. So I think McDowell is going to be highly owned, um, but I think it's for good reason. An interesting pivot off of him would be Anthony Alfredo, 5,800. He's next on the board. He starts 35th. I'm at a 5, mostly because he's just so inconsistent. We've seen him look good at times this year, but we've seen him honestly look not so good more often than not. I see you're a little higher on Alfredo. What are you kind of expecting to get out of him for this Michigan race?
Yeah, I've given him a 6. I think at $5,800 and that 35th place starting position, it's worth a risk. I'm not doing it in cash game plays by any stretch of the imagination, but if he gets 24th or so, he'll be worth that value. It's going to be a stretch to get there. But if we see a couple accidents and things along those lines, it could play in his favor. Because underneath him, in my opinion, I really don't want to have any exposure to anybody else below Anthony Alfredo, and that includes Corey LaJoie's alternate driver, Josh Berry, that's hopping into the car this week. He's at 5,600, starting 24th. I've given him a 4. I wish he was in better equipment and that he wasn't going all the ways to the rear of the field. It might help his case, but in my opinion, I think Anthony Alfredo's the bottom of the barrel for me.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of mention there's really no one else below Alfredo that I want to roster, but it's obviously worth noting that Josh Berry is racing. You know, he raced in the Xfinity race uh, at Michigan. I'm at a 4 as well. I'm kind of right there with you. But if he can get the most out of this car, if he can get what I think this car is capable of getting, he could get a 20th, maybe just inside the top 20. I mean, he's good. He'll obviously have experience in the with the Xfinity race, but it's not a short track. If it was a short track, I'd be much higher on it. So I don't think he's going to really play out without some crazy chaotic NASCAR stuff happening. But after Indy, hell, who knows what we're going to get. We might see Justin Haley back in the optimal lineup or something because it's been pretty wild the last few weeks. But for me personally, I think Alfredo is going to be the lowest that I'll go.
Yeah, no, exactly. But man, it's going to be interesting to see how things kind of play out. I'm kind of awkward that we're doing this kind of setup, but hey, it works. I'm glad we were able to get this out to everyone. We appreciate everybody's support out there that has subscribed to our YouTube channel. That's a big help for us. So if you do like the content that you're seeing, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us out. We've got our race guide and some other content that's downloadable in the links below. That race guide has a lot of other information to kind of help you get your lineup builds ready to go. We've got some core lineup builds in that race guide for you to take a look at. And then we also give you some of our thoughts and insights throughout that digital magazine, if you will. And then also we've got other content available on our Patreon. That is something that we continue to see people help support us in that manner. It has helped us kind of do this dual split screen scenario, helped us kind of figure out that with some of the extra money that we've been able to acquire through that. We really truly appreciate all the support there on our Patreon. We can't do this without you. But yeah, man, I'm super excited to kind of get this thing rolling. Again, it's kind of a little bit different week for us because of some stuff that's popped up. But hey, let's get to it, man. You got anything to add before we wrap this thing up?
No, I really don't. It's another week. Kind of glad to be back on ovals, although I love the road courses. Don't get me wrong. But it'll be fun to see how these last two races go for the regular season. It's cool that we get some action down at the bottom to see who gets in, and we also get some action up top between Larson and Hamlin to see who's going to get that regular season championship. So really, it's just I'm looking again. I'm looking forward to this race. I think there's going to be some nice little betting lines too to look at that probably have to play a little bit. But yeah, no, I'm good, man. Take it home.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're off here at Michigan, and if you have anything else that you would like to see or anything, definitely leave us a comment. But if nothing else, we'll be back next week for Daytona, which I'm super excited about. But for the DK Garage, I'm Joe. That's Jeremy, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.